James became King of Scotland when his mother Mary fled to England in 1567. He was 1 year old when he was crowned James VI. He grew up learning how to steer a path between religious fanatics and the violent Scottish nobility, and at the same time acquired a serious scholarly education. He was very proud of that.
He pleaded for his mother's life, but accepted the fact of her execution by the English Queen Elizabeth. Business was business, and he had no memory of Mary. He'd been taught that she was a scarlet woman, and she had, after all, murdered his father and taken a lover. He was the recognized heir to the English crown, and he wasn't going to put that in danger. And so in 1603, when Elizabeth the Virgin Queen eventually died, the oldest monarch England had ever had, he came from Edinburgh to London for his coronation. By the accident of heredity, England and Scotland were now united in a single kingdom, Britain. Everyone had high hopes of James, especially the Roman Catholics, who thought that his distaste for bossy Scottish Presbyterians would encourage him to lift Elizabeth's restraints on their worship. They were wrong about that. The authority of the king was very dear to him. He spelled out his ideology in masques, theatrical balls, in his new banqueting house in Whitehall. His intellectual take on the job was that he was God's deputy and that he ruled by divine right as the absolute sovereign power in England. Having been raised in Scotland, he was rather baffled by the idea of common law, the notion that law was in the hearts and minds of the people, expressed through the precedents of the courts and their juries of ordinary folk. But this was the essence of the English system. It had been essential for the Normans to operate that way, as foreign rulers in a land they didn't know, and it had become embedded in the fabric of English life. Henry VIII and Elizabeth had the position of tyrants, but their tyranny required popular consent. They had to be popular in order to rule. James wasn't good at being popular. He was head of a court, a place of factions and favourites, and was grand in a very private way.
Everywhere else, the ruler made the law. He was the law, but not in England. Kingship existed under the law. James simply didn't understand this. He was certain that the job of king meant being above the law. And being James, he not only understood this was the problem, but said so as a matter of principle.
And when the Lord Chief Justice disagreed, the Lord Chief Justice got the sack. James was, people said, the wisest fool in Christendom. He needed to raise taxes, but taxation was always regarded as a special event. Taxes might be levied if there was an emergency need for cash, but the law said that this could not be done without the agreement of Parliament, which gave the Commons the chance to present demands to him. They expected what was called redress of grievances before granting him supplies. And these were exactly the kind of people who tended to be Puritans, low church, with no real sense of proper deference to people better born than themselves. So he avoided that as much as possible. His way of life didn't help either. His diversions were hunting, an obsession, and pretty young men, another obsession.
By the time King James died, aged 58, in 1625, the king and the Puritans were set on course for a direct collision, and his son Charles wasn't going to change direction.